The alarm rang at 4:30 in the morning, long before the sun even thought about rising. Evelyn was already awake. She lay still for a moment, staring at the faint crack in the ceiling above her bed, listening to the quiet rhythm of the small apartment. In the next room, her son slept peacefully, wrapped in the kind of calm she worked every day to protect. She exhaled slowly, pushed the blanket aside, and sat up. Another day. Another shift. Another chance to keep everything from falling apart. The kitchen light flickered as she turned it on. The bulb needed replacing, but that would have to wait. Everything always had to wait. She poured coffee into a chipped mug, the same one she'd been using for years, and leaned against the counter, letting the heat warm her hands. Bills sat stacked neatly at the edge of the table. Rent. Electricity. School fees. Groceries. She didn't look at them for long. Instead, her eyes drifted to a small drawing taped to the fridge. Crayon lines, uneven circles, a stick figure holding a taller one's hand. At the top, in messy handwriting. Me and Mom. A faint smile touched her lips. That was enough. By 6:30, she was dressed in her diner uniform, tying her apron as she moved quietly through the apartment. She paused at Daniel's door, pushing it open just enough to peek inside. He was sprawled across the bed, one arm hanging off the side, his face soft with sleep. "Danny," she whispered gently. "Time to wake up." He groaned, burying his face into the pillow. 5 more minutes. She stepped in, sitting on the edge of the bed, brushing his hair back. "You said that yesterday. And you said you'd let me sleep." She laughed softly. "I say a lot of things." He cracked one eye open, studying her. Even at his young age, there was something observant about him, something that noticed more than most children did. "You look tired, Mom." For a second, she froze. Then she smiled, light and easy. "I'm always tired." "That's not funny." "It wasn't meant to be." He sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes. "Did you come home late again?" "Just a little." "You promised you wouldn't work so much." She hesitated, just for a moment, then reached for his hand. "I promise I'll always do what's best for you." He frowned slightly, not fully convinced, but he didn't argue. He never did. The diner smelled like coffee, grease, and long hours. Evelyn moved through it with practiced efficiency, balancing plates, refilling cups, offering smiles that came easily even when her feet ached. "Table 4 needs their check," the manager called out. "Got it," she replied, already moving. A customer snapped his fingers impatiently. "Miss, I asked for no onions." She nodded, calm. "I'll fix that right away." No frustration. No attitude. Just quiet resilience. During her break, she sat alone in the back, unwrapping a sandwich she had packed at home. Halfway through, she stopped and folded it back up. Daniel would be hungry after school. She slipped it back into her bag. Evenings were the hardest. After her second job, she would walk home under dim streetlights, her body heavy but her mind still racing. There was always something else to think about. Something to plan. Something to fix. But the moment she opened the apartment door, everything softened. "Mom." Daniel's voice echoed as he ran toward her, nearly knocking her off balance. "Hey, slow down," she laughed, holding on to him. "You're late." "I know. I'm sorry. You missed my game." The words landed quietly, heavier than anything else she had carried that day. She knelt down, meeting his eyes. "Did you win?" He shrugged. "Yeah, but you weren't there." For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Then she reached out, cupping his face gently. "Tell me everything." And he did. Every pass. Every goal. Every moment. She listened like it was the most important story in the world. Because to her, it was. Nights were quieter. After dinner, after homework, after the dishes were done, they would sit together on the worn-out couch. Sometimes the TV was on, sometimes it wasn't. It didn't matter. What do you want to be when you grow up? She asked one night. Daniel didn't hesitate. Rich. She raised an eyebrow. That's it? He nodded seriously. I don't want you to work anymore. Her chest tightened. That's a big goal. I'll do it, he said firmly. You'll see. She studied him for a moment, then smiled. I believe you. Really? Really? He leaned against her shoulder, satisfied. Then you won't have to be tired all the time. She wrapped an arm around him, holding him close. He didn't understand yet. But one day, he would. Years passed quietly, marked not by milestones but by sacrifices. New clothes for Daniel meant none for her. School trips for him meant skipped meals for her. Opportunities for him meant long nights for her. She never complained. Not once. To the outside world, it might have looked like struggle. To Evelyn, it was purpose. One evening, as she tucked him into bed, Daniel looked up at her with a seriousness that didn't belong to a child. Mom? Yes? When I grow up. I'll take care of you. She paused, her hand resting lightly on his blanket. You don't have to do that. I want to. His voice was certain. Unshaken. You've done everything for me. For a moment, her composure slipped. Just a little. She brushed it off quickly, smoothing his hair back. Get some sleep, she said softly. But as she turned off the light and stepped out of the room, his words stayed with her. Not as a promise she expected him to keep, but as something warm. Something hopeful. Something that made all the long days and sleepless nights feel like they were leading somewhere. Back in the kitchen, she stood alone again, the same flickering light above her. The same stack of bills waiting. The same quiet life pressing in from all sides. But something was different. Not in her circumstances. Not in her exhaustion. But in her belief. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was building something. For him. Always for him. And as she picked up her coffee mug, now cold, she allowed herself a small, rare thought. One day, it will all be worth it. The first time Evelyn stepped into Daniel's new apartment, she paused at the door. It wasn't hesitation. It was disbelief. The space was nothing like the small, worn-out home she had spent years holding together. This place was bright, open, polished down to the smallest detail. Glass tables, clean lines, soft lighting that didn't flicker. Everything looked untouched, as if no one truly lived there. Mom, come in, Daniel said, already halfway inside, loosening his tie. She stepped carefully onto the smooth floor, almost afraid her shoes might leave marks. It's beautiful, she said, turning slowly, taking it all in. It's just an apartment, he replied casually, dropping his keys on the counter. Nothing special. She smiled faintly. To him, it wasn't. To her, it was everything she had once imagined for him, only she had never pictured herself standing inside it. He moved quickly, talking as he walked. Kitchen's over there, living area here, oh, and the guest room, if you ever stay over. His words came fast, like he was checking off a list. She followed quietly, nodding, absorbing more than he realized. You did all this on your own, she asked. Daniel shrugged. It's just work, Mom. You know, long hours, good connections. She studied him. The way he spoke, the way he carried himself, it was different now. Sharper. More controlled. More distant. Later, as they sat across from each other at the dining table, she noticed something else. Silence felt unfamiliar between them. It wasn't uncomfortable, exactly. Just empty. So, she began, folding her hands together, you've been busy.
Yeah,
He said, glancing briefly at his phone. Things have been moving fast. That's good.
yeah,
Another pause. She cleared her throat. I brought you something. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small container. Homemade food. Still warm. His expression shifted slightly, not annoyance, but something close. Mom, you didn't have to do that. I know. I wanted to. He hesitated, then took it. Thanks. But he didn't open it. The evening moved on, but something subtle lingered beneath every moment. Evelyn noticed the way he checked his watch. The way his attention drifted. The way his phone lit up constantly with messages she didn't understand. At one point, he stood abruptly. I have to take this, he said, stepping into the other room. She nodded, pretending not to notice the urgency in his voice. From where she sat, she could hear fragments of the conversation.
Yeah.
No, she's just visiting. I'll be there in an hour, don't worry. She looked down at her hands. Just visiting. When he returned, he seemed slightly distracted. Sorry about that. Work stuff. It's all right, she said softly. He hesitated for a moment, then added, actually. I have a dinner thing tonight. It came up last minute. Her chest tightened, but her expression didn't change. Oh. I see. I didn't expect you to come today. It's fine, she replied quickly. I was just in the area. That wasn't true. But she didn't correct herself. They stood near the door a few minutes later. I can call you a cab, Daniel offered. No need. I'll manage. You sure? She smiled. I've managed my whole life. He gave a short nod, not quite catching the weight behind her words. All right. I'll call you later. She stepped out into the hallway, turning back briefly. I'm proud of you, she said. For a second, something softened in his expression. Thanks, Mom. Then the door closed. Weeks passed. Phone calls became shorter. Visits became rare. And slowly, without any clear moment to mark it, something shifted. One afternoon, Daniel called unexpectedly. Hey, Mom. Her face lit up instantly. Daniel. Everything okay?
Yeah.
I just wanted to tell you something. She sat down, heart quietly hopeful. What is it? I'm seeing someone. Her smile widened. That's wonderful. Her name's Claire. Tell me about her. There was a slight pause, then his tone changed, more animated now. She's smart. Works in finance. Her family's, well, they're pretty established. Evelyn listened carefully. And she's important to you?
Yeah.
He said, without hesitation. That's all that matters. They met a month later. Claire arrived exactly on time, dressed in a way that looked effortless, but clearly wasn't. She smiled politely, extending her hand. It's nice to finally meet you. You too, Evelyn replied warmly. For a moment, everything seemed fine. But as the evening unfolded, small things began to stand out. Claire's questions were precise. Controlled. So, what do you do? She asked. I've worked in a few places, Evelyn said. Mostly service jobs. Claire nodded, a thin smile on her lips. That must have been challenging. It was necessary. Daniel shifted slightly in his seat. Later, during dinner, Evelyn told a story from Daniel's childhood. He used to hate broccoli, she said, laughing softly. I had to pretend it was something else just to get him to eat it. Claire smiled politely. Daniel didn't. Mom, he said quietly, you don't have to bring that up. Evelyn paused. It's just a story. I know. But still. Something in his tone stopped her from continuing. After that night, things changed faster. Daniel began correcting her. Small things at first. Mom, it's pronounced like this. Maybe don't say that around people. You don't have to dress like that when you come out. Each comment seemed harmless on its own. But together, they formed something heavier. Something colder. One evening, she called him. I was thinking, maybe I could come to one of your events. Just to see what you do. There was a pause on the other end. Mom, it's not really your kind of place. I can adjust. It's not about that. Then what is it? Silence. Then, quietly. It's just different. She held the phone tighter. I see. I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. A small breath escaped her lips. Of course. After the call ended, Evelyn sat still for a long time. Not crying. Not angry. Just thinking. Across the city, Daniel stood by his window, looking out at the skyline. Claire stepped beside him. Everything okay? She asked.
Yeah.
Your mom? He nodded. She hesitated, then said carefully, she's very different from what you're used to now. He didn't respond immediately. Then, quietly. I know. That night, as Evelyn prepared for bed, she passed by the fridge. The old drawing was still there. Me and Mom. Her fingers traced the edges gently. For years, that had been enough. More than enough. But now, something unspoken lingered in the air. Not a break. Not yet. But a distance that was growing, slowly and steadily, with every passing day. And for the first time, Evelyn felt it clearly. Not as a passing moment. But as something that might not go away. The news did not reach Evelyn from her son. It came from someone else. A neighbor, standing too casually at the doorway, holding a grocery bag in one hand and curiosity in the other. I saw Daniel online, she said, as if mentioning the weather. Such a big announcement. His engagement, she looks lovely. Evelyn blinked, her fingers tightening slightly around the edge of the door. Engagement? The neighbor nodded. Yes, it's everywhere. Pictures, family dinners, celebrations. You must be so proud. Evelyn forced a smile that felt steady enough to pass. Yes, she said softly. Of course. But the moment the door closed, the quiet inside her home shifted. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough to feel wrong. She didn't rush to check anything. Didn't grab her phone. Didn't search for proof. Instead, she walked back to the kitchen, set the groceries down, and stood there for a moment, staring at nothing in particular. Then, slowly, she reached for her phone. Her hands were calm. Her breath was not. The pictures appeared instantly. Daniel, dressed sharply, standing beside Claire, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Smiling. Confident. Surrounded by people who looked like they belonged to a world Evelyn had never entered. There were more photos. A dinner. A celebration. Laughter frozen in perfect frames. Comments filled the screen. Congratulations. Beautiful couple. Such an elegant event. Evelyn scrolled carefully, her expression unchanged. She wasn't looking for approval. She was looking for something else. A message. A call. Anything. There was nothing. She placed the phone down gently, as if it might break under pressure. Maybe he wanted to tell me himself, she murmured. It sounded reasonable. It felt incomplete. Days passed. She waited. Not actively. Not by the phone. But in that quiet way people wait when they don't want to admit they are waiting at all. Every time it rang, her heart reacted before her mind could stop it. Every message notification pulled her attention for just a second longer than necessary. But none of them were from him. One evening, she decided to call. The phone rang twice before he answered. Hey, Mom. His voice was normal. Too normal. Hi, Daniel. A brief pause settled between them. I heard the news, she said. Oh. He cleared his throat.
Yeah.
I was going to tell you. I figured. She's great, Mom. You'll like her. I already met her. Right.
Yeah.
Another pause. This one heavier. Daniel, she said carefully, when were you planning to tell me? I've just been busy, he replied quickly. Things have been moving fast. I understand. And she did. Just not in the way he meant. Is there a date? She asked. Soon, he said. We're finalizing things. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Silence returned, stretching longer this time. Evelyn felt it clearly now. Not confusion. Not surprise. Something closer to distance solidifying into form. Will you let me know when everything's decided? She asked. Of course. The answer came too easily. Too quickly. She noticed. But she didn't question it. After the call ended, she sat back in her chair, her hands resting quietly in her lap. It wasn't the engagement. It wasn't the pictures. It was something simpler. She hadn't been part of it. Not even at the edges. The weeks that followed moved strangely. Information reached her in fragments. A florist booked. A venue chosen. A dress fitting. All of it came from outside sources, neighbors, acquaintances, things she overheard without trying. Never from Daniel. One afternoon, she ran into an old friend at the store. Evelyn. I heard about the wedding, the woman said warmly. You must be so busy with the preparations. Evelyn smiled, controlled and polite. Yes, she said. It's a lot. What's the date again? Soon, Evelyn replied. She didn't know. That night, she sat at the small table in her kitchen, staring at a blank calendar. No marks. No plans. No invitations. Just empty squares stretching across the month. She picked up her phone again. This time, she didn't hesitate. Daniel, she said when he answered, her voice steady, I need to ask you something. Sure. There was a faint distraction in his tone, like his attention was divided. What's the date of the wedding? A pause. Not long. But long enough. It's next month, he said. Which day? Another pause. The 18th. She nodded slowly, though he couldn't see her. I see. I was waiting for the invitation, she added, gently. The silence that followed was immediate. Heavy. Unavoidable. Mom, he began, then stopped. She didn't interrupt. Didn't rush to fill the space. She let him find the words. It's complicated, he said finally. Her grip on the phone tightened, just slightly. In what way? It's just, the kind of event it is. The people who are coming. Claire's family. Daniel. Her voice was calm. Firm enough to stop him. Yes? Are you saying I'm not invited? The question settled between them, clear and unsoftened. He exhaled slowly. I didn't know how to tell you. That's not an answer. It's just, you wouldn't be comfortable there. A faint ache moved through her chest. I can decide that for myself. It's not about that. Then what is it about? He hesitated again. And in that hesitation, she heard everything he wasn't saying. It's different, Mom, he said quietly. It's not the kind of place you're used to. She closed her eyes for a moment. Not in anger. Not in disbelief. Just to steady herself. I see, she said. I didn't want to hurt you. A small breath escaped her lips. You didn't want to tell me. That's not fair. No, she agreed softly. It's not. The conversation ended shortly after. There was nothing left to clarify. Nothing left to misunderstand. Evelyn placed the phone down carefully, the same way she had days before. But this time, something inside her had shifted. Not broken. Not yet. But changed. She stood up slowly and walked to the living room. The space felt smaller than usual. The apartment felt unfamiliar that night. Nothing had moved. Nothing had broken. Every object remained exactly where it had always been. Yet something in the air had shifted, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Evelyn stood by the sink, staring at the glass in her hand. She had washed it twice already, though it had never been dirty. Water dripped slowly from the faucet. Tick. 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 She turned it off. Silence returned. She moved through the apartment without purpose, her steps slow, measured. The kind of movement that comes when the mind is too full to decide where to go. In the living room, she paused. The photograph still sat on the shelf. Daniel at 10 years old, missing a front tooth, smiling like the world belonged to him. His arm wrapped around her shoulders, holding tight. She picked it up again. This time, she didn't smile. "You always held on so tightly," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Her thumb brushed lightly across the glass. "And I never let go." The words lingered, heavier than she expected. She sat down on the couch, the cushion sinking slightly beneath her weight. The room felt smaller tonight, as if the space had shrunk around her thoughts. Her eyes drifted across the apartment. The worn carpet. The old lamp with its uneven light. The small table where bills had been sorted for years. Everything carried a memory. Every corner held a piece of a life she had built carefully, one decision at a time. For him. Always for him. She leaned back, closing her eyes. And then, without warning, the past began to surface. Daniel at 5, clinging to her leg on his first day of school. "Don't leave me," he had cried. "I'll be right here when you're done," she had promised. And she had been. Waiting outside, long before the final bell rang. Daniel at 12, sitting at the kitchen table, frustrated over homework. "I can't do this," he had said, pushing the paper away. "Yes, you can," she had replied, pulling the chair closer. "No, I can't." "Then we'll figure it out together." And they had. Every time. Daniel at 16, standing in the doorway late at night. "I got the job," he had said, trying to sound calm but failing. Her face had lit up instantly. "I knew you would." He had laughed. "You always say that." "Because I'm always right." The memories came one after another, not as distant moments but as something alive, something still present in the room with her. Each one carried warmth. Each one carried proof. Proof of effort. Proof of love. Proof of everything she had given without hesitation. Evelyn opened her eyes slowly. The room returned. But the feeling didn't. Something had shifted beneath the surface. Not in the memories. But in how she saw them. She sat up, placing the photograph gently on the table in front of her. Her gaze lingered on it, but her expression had changed. There was no sadness now. No confusion. Only a quiet kind of clarity. "When did it change?" she asked softly. The question wasn't directed at anyone. There was no one there to answer. Still, she waited. At first, nothing came. Then, slowly, pieces began to fall into place. Not a single moment. Not one decision. But a series of small shifts. The shorter calls. The distracted tone. The subtle corrections. The way he had started to look at her, not with warmth, but with something closer to discomfort. She exhaled slowly. It didn't happen all at once, she realized. It never does. Her eyes moved around the room again, but this time, she saw something different. Not memories. Patterns. Every choice she had made. Every sacrifice. Every time she had stepped back so he could step forward. She stood up suddenly, the movement sharper than anything she had done all evening. Her reflection caught her attention in the dark window across the room. She walked toward it. For a moment, she didn't recognize the woman staring back. Not because she looked different, but because she had never really looked before. Lines marked her face, not from age alone, but from years of effort. Her posture carried the weight of responsibilities she had never shared. Her eyes held something deeper. Something that had been there all along, waiting to be seen. "When did I disappear?" she asked quietly. The question landed harder than the last. She thought back. Not to Daniel this time. To herself. To the person she had been before everything became about survival. Before every decision had been measured against what he needed. Before her own wants had slowly faded into the background. She searched for that version of herself. And realized she couldn't find her. The room felt still again. But now, the silence carried something else. Not emptiness. Awareness. Evelyn stepped back, her gaze steady on her reflection. "I gave him everything," she said. The statement was simple. True. Undeniable. But then, something else followed. Something she had never said out loud before. "I gave myself nothing." The words didn't break her. They didn't make her cry. They settled. Firm. Clear. Final. She turned away from the window and walked back to the table. The photograph remained where she had left it. She picked it up once more. But this time, she didn't hold on to it. She placed it back on the shelf. Carefully. Deliberately. Not as something she needed. But as something that had already served its purpose. The decision didn't come as a sudden burst. It didn't feel dramatic. There was no rush of emotion. No overwhelming surge. Just a quiet, steady understanding. "I won't go," she said aloud. Her voice didn't shake. "I won't ask again." The words hung in the air, firm and unchallenged. She moved toward the kitchen, her steps more certain now. The calendar still sat on the table. Blank. Unchanged. She picked it up and looked at it for a moment. Then she folded it in half and set it aside. There would be no date marked. No waiting. No place reserved. Her eyes shifted to the stack of bills. For years, they had dictated everything. Every choice. Every hour. Every sacrifice. She reached for them, flipping through the pages slowly. Numbers. Due dates. Responsibilities. All tied to a life that had been built around someone else. She placed them back down neatly. But something in her expression had changed again. "This isn't all there is," she said quietly. Not as a question. As a statement. For the first time in years, the future didn't feel like something she was chasing. It felt like something she could choose. The thought was unfamiliar. But not uncomfortable. She turned off the kitchen light and stood there for a moment, letting the darkness settle around her. Not as something heavy. But as something calm. In the distance, a car passed. A door closed somewhere down the hall. Life continued, untouched by the shift that had just taken place. Evelyn walked back to her room, her steps steady, her mind clear in a way it hadn't been before. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hands resting lightly in her lap. No rushing thoughts. No tangled emotions. Just one quiet truth. She had spent her life holding on. Tonight, for the first time, she let go. Not of love. Not of memory. But of expectation. And in that space where something had ended, something else had quietly begun.